Hi everybody, it's Tatiana and I am coming once again to do another cold weather reading recommendation, and I was super duper excited when a couple of people commented on, or maybe it just was one person, I don't know, but it just did my heart good to see that somebody said, I would like some tome recommendations. I think it was two people who said they don't really read tomes because the books can be intimidating, but they were open to receiving some tome recommendations coming from me. Yay! So that is what this video is. If you cannot tell, I am in pajamas because it's cooler and it's colder. And yeah, videos in pajamas from now until spring. Anyway, this time I'm coming with some tome recommendations, which will be books that are over 500 pages. I do have a couple of honorable mentions, which are going to be books that are just under 500 pages, but are dense and take a lot. So, one of them I don't have, no, two of them I don't have with me. One because I don't physically own it, and the other because it's on my bookshelf that's in that direction and I'm not getting up to get it. So the one that's in the bookshelf in that direction that I'm not getting up to get is The Warded Man by Peter V. Brett. I want to say it is like just in the middle of the 400 page range mark, but it is a high fantasy first novel of a series called the Demon Cycle series, and there are these demons and beasts that come from the ground, from down under when the lights go out. That sounded really, really like dramatic, but when night falls, and it is, in that story we follow Arlen Bells, and it starts with him and his father and how they deal with this situation, and it is the beginning of a wonderful high fantasy series. I will be completely honest, it does take a lot to get into. It took me 2 tries to read this book in its entirety. The first time I only read to like 50 pages, and because it was just moving a little slow, it may have been less than 50 pages. But there's a point when the story kicks off and like your heart falls in it before you even realize it, and then you're hooked. So if you could get to that point, it's so worth it. The next honorable mention is The Good House by Tananarive Due. This is just under 500 pages. I want to say it's like 468 pages. No, 400. Okay, that's acknowledgments. 480 pages. So it's 20 pages shy of being an actual tome. However, this book is dense. Like, there's no space wasted in this novel. The first time I read it, it took me a month to read it, and that's just because of how much that's in it. And it is a horror novel, and I was getting creeped out, which is like even better. If you have never heard of this before, this follows the story of a descendant of the 2 characters that are introduced at the beginning of the book, who own what is called the Good House. This is a house that has stood the test of time and the test of trial and tragedy in the area where it is, and it comes a point where Angela, is that the man? Yeah, Angela is having to make a decision as to whether or not she's going to keep the house or sell the house, and in coming to that decision, she comes to stay in the house to see about some things being repaired, and it takes off from there, and it's so good. Like, I felt like it was so good the first time I read it, and then the second time I read it, it just solidified how good it was. And the second time I read it by audiobook, and the audiobook is narrated by Robin Miles, and she's an awesome audiobook narrator, but she did such a good job with this story. And it's difficult for me when reading a book having read it in print first, and then listening to it as an audiobook, because I already have in my head what the characters sound like, and Robin Miles' narration did not completely destroy that for me. And yeah, I just thoroughly enjoyed it. This is a lot of time I'm spending talking about an honorable mention. And then the third legit honorable mention that I have is a book that I have not yet finished, and I haven't finished it because I'm just lazy, and that is The Count of Monte Cristo by Alexandre Dumas. That is like the original version of it, translated without being abridged, is over 1,300 pages. So it is definitely a work that will take you some time to get through. I was actually almost finished listening to it in audiobook form, and I just couldn't take it in the audiobook form anymore. I actually want to reread it from the beginning in print, and I'm going to get it on my Kindle with a different translator. I want the Robin Buss translation, which is the Penguin Classic translated edition. So in a perfect world, I would be able to read Alexandre Dumas' books in a year, but all of his books are long, and even with the 4 that I definitely want to read, I couldn't read all 4 of them in a year and read anything else. I'm very much aware of that, but Alexandre Dumas is an author who really has a thing for wrongfully imprisoned, or had, because he's long gone from this earth, a thing for wrongfully imprisoned male characters who come back with great elaborate schemes of revenge, and vengeance stories are my jam. So that is an honorable mention because I haven't finished it. Okay, so on to the actual tomes that I'm going to recommend for this video. The first was almost an honorable mention, but when I checked Goodreads, the edition that's on Goodreads is over 500 pages. The edition I have is over 500 pages if you read the author's note, which I did when I read it, but with just the story, it's not over 500 pages, but Goodreads says it is, so I'm including it. As I've been holding it up this whole time, you see that it's Cane River by Lolita Tatamy. I have not yet read the sequel to this, but this book is so awesome. It is a fictionalized account of her, Lolita Tatamy's, ancestors, based on information that she was able to pull in her own search into her ancestry. And what amazes me the most about this is that she started this search before the internet was a widely accessible thing, or easily accessible thing for the average Joe or average Jane. And I loved this story. I do have a review of it that I will either link in the description below or the cards above. If you have not read this, or at least pulled up one of the discussions, not one of, I could only find one on YouTube, so the discussion that she has about this at some library event years ago. But this is awesome. It is a great work of historical fiction. It is a great work of a fictionalized historical retelling of family history. There's another book that is on the same that I love just as much as I love this, which I won't mention in this video because it's not at home. So, but yes, this. The next book that I'm going to recommend is kind of pushing the envelope because it's a bind up of 3 books, but it's put together as one book, and that is Lilith's Brood by Octavia Butler, which is the bind up of Dawn, Adulthood, Rights, and Imago. Is that in? Yes, that's in the right order too. And with all 3 of these stories together, the book bind up is almost 750 pages. These are books 2, 3, and 4 that I read by Octavia Butler. I do plan to reread these as soon as I finish the Seed to Harvest bind up, which is the bind up of the Pattern Master series. I have 2 more books in that, and I want to go back and reread this, but reread it over the course of a year, because I read like all 3 of these in 4 months, and it was a little bit too much for my brain. So I want to take these back in. But I can't have a recommendations video of any sort without mentioning Octavia Butler in some way, shape, or form. So this is how we're doing it. And then the last 2 books that I have to mention are both from the same series, and they're just awesome. The first is Asheron by Sherilyn Kenyon, and the second is Sticks by Sherilyn Kenyon. Now, if Sticks is over 800 pages, Asheron is over 6. It's over 700 pages, but Sticks has like 120 pages more than Asheron. You can't read these, in my opinion. It takes the complete joy and emotional connection that you get out of paranormal romance. That's what these two are. So if this is not your cup of tea, just don't read them at all. But you can't get the connection and the love for these two stories if you don't read the Dark Hunter novels that I recommended in the first recommendations video, because they are not tomes. So in order to get and understand who these characters are and their relationship with not just each other but the other characters in the Dark Hunter series, you have to read some of the books before this series starts. Now, or these two books start. Now, you can read them back to back once you get to these points, but you have to read some of the other books before you jump into these. I will say, the Dark Hunter novels are great to read in print, but they are also very enjoyable as audiobooks. There's one narrator that I like above the others, but there's only one that I don't like, and it's a female narrator, and I can't remember her. I can't even remember the guys' names right now. But the one guy that I really like also narrates her audiobooks for her The League series. But yeah, these were so good, and I read both of them over Christmas. Like, this was over Christmas in maybe 2012 or 2010, somewhere in there, and this was over Christmas, and I want to say 2016. And I love them so much. So, yes, like, this is a recommendation between these two videos, a recommendation for a whole entire series. And that's, again, if you like paranormal romance. If you are not into romance, then it's not for you. If you are not into fantasy, it might be for you. If you're not into fantasy but you're into romance, it might be for you. If you're into urban fantasy and romance, get on these. So yeah, that's all that I have for this video. I am going to sit these down. That's all that I have for this video. Thank you all for watching, and I hope you have a good weekend whenever you see this video. Peace out.